And our final presentation for today, last but by no means least, because I tell you that what these guys are doing in South Australia is pretty impressive. It is Alexander Scanlon. He's the managing director of Barton Gold. The ASX code is BGD. Sit up and take some notice. Alex, over to you. Let's hear about what, because you guys have been busy since IPO.
That's right. Yeah, we've been very busy. So yeah, thank you for having us back. We'll just jump into the presentation here. Quick summary for those who aren't familiar with Barton Gold. Essentially, we've put together a very large scale play in the Central Gawler Craton. And we've got a bit of a unique profile as the only real pure play, pure gold of Australia on the ASX. We've got about 4,600 square kilometers of tenements, about 1.1 million ounce resource base, and we have 100% ownership of the only gold mill in that region. A really key thing for us and what we've been doing and what we're excited about what we're doing going forward is we are focused on large scale innovation driven exploration. We're not targeting small production. We're not targeting a restart of prior operations. We're looking to establish a new large scale independent producer. So what we're doing is targeting multi-million ounce resource growth and eventually the development and operation of multiple mills. We've got a fantastic team, proven company and resource builders. We have excellent stakeholder and government relations. And as of the 31st of December, we have $11.6 million. So we're very well capitalized to continue the momentum that we finished last year with and lean into it this year. And that this year is going to look like additional geophysical work across both of our main project areas, but most importantly, over 20,000 meters of drilling, targeting resource updates in the second half of the year. So when we think about, again, that strategy that we're talking about, we do have a large infrastructure hub, and that's what we refer to as our northern hub. We have the region's only gold mill. It's about 655,000 ton per annum, runs very efficiently, 94.5% recoveries, and it can be restarted with limited refurbishment costs. We've also have some minority interest in JV gold rights in the area, but we're really focused on scale here. So this is not a mill restart plan. There's a much bigger picture focus. That mill provides us some leverage to a much bigger play, but that bigger play really is development of the southern hub. So that southern hub contains two large scale systems at Tarcoola and Tunkillia. That ground has been significantly underexplored for a very long period of time. And that's where we're bringing a lot of new technology or reprocessing of older tech and more, older data, using a lot of new R&D techniques to basically leverage that historical data and rapidly expand project footprints. So we're targeting new discoveries, large scale resource growth, and that southern hub development. The northern hub gives us some leverage because it allows us to, for example, have a stage 1 operation if we want to leverage that for early stage operations at Tarcoola. But it's really about the big picture, developing Tarcoola and Tunkillia together as a hub. They're only 70 kilometers apart, and together they can form quite a formidable asset package. In terms of how that's been going, we've made very rapid progress since our IPO. We IPO'd in June of last year at Tarcoola. We've got a new 350 meter long gold zone at the Perseverance mine. We've called that Perseverance West. We've identified 200 meters of depth extensions on the open pit. More importantly, as we're looking outward, we've identified over 25 shallow targets on the mining lease using new technology. And we're also putting together that regional story, which we'll take you through in a minute. We've done about 80 square kilometers of gravity surveys. In 2020, we did 140 square kilometers of high resolution aeromagnetics. So that's pulling together a really interesting picture. At Tunkillia, we've identified a higher grade central zone in our 223 deposit. We've identified two new gold zones, one at area 223 north and one at area 191. And those together have added about 1.5 kilometers of new mineralization for about a 60% strike increase in only one drilling swing. On the corporate side, we've been aggressively building a new South Australia-based corporate and exploration team. And we've also gotten about $380,000 in total grants from the South Australian government. So we're really working hard to make sure we're getting a lot of non-dilutive value add for shareholders as well, and making sure that we're expanding our IPO capital as far as we can. And what it really comes down to is we are reapproaching this area. We're developing new geological models. We're rapidly growing the existing project footprints, and we are essentially setting the foundations for a very large scale regional expansion and development. Quick corporate snapshot, some of the things we've just covered. We've got a very tightly held capital structure. Our free float is around 50%, pretty limited number of shares and options on issue. We've got a market capitalization of about $43 million right now. And with cash on hand, we have an enterprise value in the low 30s, about $32 million. In terms of our team, I mentioned we've got a great team. Quite a few faces here that people may recognize on both the board and our technical team. We have 3 new additions in the last 3 months. Nick Byrne has joined us as CFO, Mark Twining as exploration manager, and Ian Garcett as principal geologist. So we are really reinforcing that South Australian identity, capability, relationships, and of course, in the world of COVID that we live in, the more we build up in South Australia, the more that we're sort of COVID-proofing our long-term development strategy. In terms of assets, we'll now move on to Tarcoola. So Tarcoola is an existing sort of proven producer. This is an asset that was the site of the South Australian gold rush in the early 1900s. But what we've identified is that this is actually a broader camp scale system that happens to have this brownfields open pit. So alongside this open pit, where there's an open escarpment, this is where in the late 1800s and early 1900s, you had the old timers coming in and hand chiseling out gold at 30, 40, and 50 gram per ton. Well, what we've discovered on the open pit that we purchased a few years ago is that there are multiple extensions of these shallow, high-grade quartz-hosted structures. There's an entirely new structure we found called Perseverance West. And again, as I mentioned, it's more about what's happening, not just at that pit, but what's going on near the pit and across the area. We have 25 new shallow targets within 1.5 kilometers of that open pit. But more importantly, a new camp scale regional geological model that shows us about 14 kilometers of analogous repeating structures, which are the same as the structure that fed that pit. So when we start in on the pit, we'll start micro and go to macro. We've got something that we have rapidly expanded away from the previous sort of historical shallow profile. So the pit was only about 30 meters depth in the north and about 70 meters depth in the south. So very much a scratch in the surface. And our drilling has identified that there's actually a new gold zone called Perseverance West. And Perseverance West is a structure that is parallel to the Deliverance target. So we actually have 2 parallel structures that are offset by about 50 to 100 meters in that south-southwest end of the pit. So that provides some pretty interesting potential high-value pit extension opportunities. And what we can see here in the image on the right is that this new Perseverance West gold zone is quite shallow. It starts at about 30 meters depth. It runs to about 125 meters depth, and it's about 350 meters long. So it's very easily accessible mineralization, and it starts right at the pit wall. We also have validated further the Deliverance target, which you can also see depicted here. And what we've got throughout this area is, again, 2 distinct gold zones. In blue here, we have a Euro limestone Pila conglomerate structure where we have some very, very interesting, very high-grade intercepts. This limestone acted as sort of a chemical trap for gold mineralization coming into the conglomerates there. And what you can see here on the bottom of the screen is just some example drilling results that we have from Perseverance West and Deliverance. A lot of very interesting results, broad and high grade, a lot of good reasons to keep picking away at this and turn this into some shallow, high value mineralization. But again, as I mentioned before, this is really just the start. Now we step out to the mining lease scale, and we're looking at a few kilometers now around the open pit. Before our IPO, we did a lot of high resolution magnetics and gravity work. And what we identified was the potential for multiple sets of structures or sort of repeating circumstances of the mineralization that created that very high grade Perseverance mine. And that mine was producing between 3 and 6 grams per ton from the open pit when it was in operations. And we identified in particular 2 targets here. We've labeled numbers 1 and 2 on this image on the left is particularly suitable for potential repeats of that. And we brought in ground penetrating radar last year, co-funded by the South Australian government. And that radar is a bit of a new tech in this area. But what it gave us was about 50 to 70 meters of vertical relief. And we validated, in fact, there are repeating structures as we predicted in those target areas number 1 and 2. But we've also identified another 20 or more shallow vein-like structures and intrusive style targets within 1.5 kilometers of that open pit mine, all within 2 to 10 meters from surface. So we have a lot of very exciting stuff to go on the mining lease itself. And of course, being on a mining lease, again, anything you put on that is going to be, from a resource perspective, is going to be very high value. But again, this is still essentially the micro picture. The macro picture is where it starts to get really exciting. Traditionally, this is an area that has been thought of only as that small, high-grade, artisanal style historical mining area. The work that we've done over the last 3 to 4 years has identified a completely new regional structural model. And we can see that here on the left side of the page. What we've identified is actually the genesis of this high-grade mineralization that was in the Perseverance mine. And that is the Perseverance shear, which we can see labeled here in this image. It extends to about 7 kilometers depth, and it plumbs directly into a Hilteba intrusive body. So those are the engines of growth in the Central Gawler Craton, the same engines of growth, engines of mineralization that you have under Olympic Dam and Prominent Hill. Yeah. What's exciting about this is that we have identified a dozen or more parallel and cross-cutting structures, which are perfectly analogous to that Perseverance shear. Now, these are previously unknown.
Wow.
And where those go to depth, they plumb into the exact same Hilteba intrusives. They pass through the same mineralizing basin rocks. And what's more, where they come to surface, where you can see this sort of couple of dozen, X marks the spots, if you will, several of those new X's correlate with some of our highest priority targets that we have labeled here in the image on the right. So you'll find if you overlay the seismic with this image on the right, you'll find that Warburton, for example, is perfectly underlain by one of these structures coming to surface. So this further cross-validates some of the historical data that we've gotten. It really opens up the picture to macro scale. So this year, we're going to be drilling on some priority targets for new discoveries. We're still waiting for some additional gravity work to come back to have sort of the 4th or 5th data point to triangulate where do we want to prioritize our drilling. But the big picture here is the big picture. There is significant potential for large-scale repeats and rapid growth of this Tarcoola project footprint.
Now, we've only got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to Tunkillia as well, Mr. Scanlon.
Absolutely. So stepping down to Tunkillia, we're about 70 kilometers south of Tarcoola. And what we're looking at here is about 50 kilometers of shear zone strike on our tenements. And where we're really focused is the Jarl-Brinde shear zone there. That's where we have the 223 deposit. It's about 965,000 ounces of mineralization. And this is basically a platform that has potential to become a multi-million ounce base very, very quickly. When we look at that 223 mineralization, what we're looking at is broad mineralization with some higher grade domains in the middle of it. And importantly, we have identified multiple advanced satellite targets near that 223 deposit that are highly prospective for significant discoveries and new mineralization. So, what have we done with that? Well, since IPO, we've actually identified 2 new gold zones. So we're rapidly expanding this project footprint. This is the 223 deposit you can see here. We've identified a new central high grade zone in the middle. We've identified a new 223 North gold zone, which is about 800 meters long. We've identified the new area 191 gold zone, which is about 650 meters long. So we've already increased the total strike at this project by 60% to almost 4 kilometers with 1 drilling swing. So in 2022, we're going to come back. We think we can significantly extend 223 North, potentially for up to another kilometer. We're going to be targeting other areas. We have a target up to the northwest called Area 51. And we're also going to be looking to extend this mineralization to the south. And the reason is that we've been applying a lot of new tech and new analysis. One of the models that we use to predict where we would find areas 223 North and 191 mineralization is a new magnetic susceptibility and AEM resistivity model. And we've tested that now in 2 targets, 223 North and 191. We have validated that with drilling and come up with new mineralization. And this model predicts that this mineralization or repeats of this mineralization also extend south down the Jarl-Brinde shear zone. So when we think about the project area that we've been infilling, we're looking at this image on the right in this sort of circled area in black here. This tiny little area next to the 223 deposit, that's your nearly 1 million ounces. 223 North is to the north. Area 51 is just to the north. That's a high priority target. So this is an area up north that we think we can convert that into a multi-million ounce potential development base. And then the question is, if these new models are showing us the extension of this mineralization down the next 5 and 10 kilometers, how big can we really make this? So for us, for the next 12 months, the big picture is exploration and advancement towards development studies. Tarcoola, again, extending that really high value gold zone, testing near mine targets, but really focused on new discoveries at regional targets. 223 North, we want to extend that gold zone at Tunkillia. We want to test and validate other priority targets, and we want to extend that target model to the south. It's all about converting targets to new mineralization, upgrading mineral resource estimates in the second half of the year, and confirming a platform for scale development. So we've got our proven exploration thesis now, and we're going to lean into that with another 20,000 meters drilling starting around April.
A lot of information there. This is your final slide because we're out of time. So tell us the value.
Well, look, big picture, we've got momentum. We've got an excellent team that we're building, and we're very well capitalized to lean into that. In terms of where we sit market, we have prepared essentially a basic comparables analysis, and this is really analysis of us with our true peer group, right? So this is Australian listed, Australian open pit gold projects that are sub 1.3 gram per ton. And what you can see here is that we traded about 1/3 of our peer group in terms of the explorers within this true peer group. So, we have got the momentum, and we think we're presenting pretty compelling value and certainly an opportunity for hopefully some very strong returns with a re-rating and continued growth and discovery.
Alex, we're going to go straight across to the Zoom networking room now. So if you've got questions and you like what you heard from Alex, jump into the Zoom networking. Alex, let's go across there, because if people got questions, they can ask you right then. Thanks for joining us on this platform. Let's go to the next one.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Cheers.